Hello, and welcome all of you to our Vital Signs lecture series. Today we're excited to have Dr. Ashley Walker with us, and she's an alumna of RIT. Class of 2008, right? Yes. She will share her background and history during her presentation, so I'll let her introduce herself later. First, let me explain the Vital Signs lecture series. We host this event annually to spotlight BIPOC and women healthcare professionals and invite them to share their experiences navigating education, medical school, and being successful in their careers. With that, let's give it up for our guest, Dr. Ashley Walker. Hello, and thank you for such a warm welcome. Honestly, I'm so happy to be back here at RIT. Last time I was here was, 2011? Really, I am honored to be back. This is truly a full circle moment for me. Thank you for inviting me to present. Today, I want to share my story with you about how I became a pharmacist and the role that RIT, NTID, played in supporting my dream. This is what I'll share during my brief presentation. First, I'll describe my background, my early childhood years, then my experience as a student at RIT. Next, exploring my journey of becoming a pharmacist and what pharmacy school looked like. Finally, the pros and cons of becoming a pharmacist. My story began at the tender age of 4. This picture is actually me when I was 4. I have 3 brothers, one of them is my twin brother, and I have 2 younger brothers, and I am the only one who's deaf. I was born hearing, but then one morning I woke up and I was completely deaf. No one knew what happened, not even my doctor. I had no fever, no illness, or anything. It just happened. I am the only member of my family who is deaf. My father once said that when it happened, my family was shocked. They didn't know what to do. My great-grandfather suggested that he go sit under a tree and let all of his emotions out. And then he needed to decide what to do with me, his daughter. So my father did. He sat under a tree and prayed and cried, and then finally decided that he didn't want to treat me any differently. Whatever I wanted, he would make it happen. So my family always supported me, and they never said no. The first person who told me no was out in the world, not my family. Because of my family's support, they truly believed I could accomplish anything I wanted. So, when I found out that I was deaf at 4 years old, being deaf was still new to me. My dad told me I was going to a new school, which I didn't really understand, so I transferred to a new elementary school. At the new school, I was shocked. All of my classmates were signing. They were all deaf and signing, and no one was speaking. I didn't know how I could communicate with them if they couldn't speak and I couldn't sign. I didn't know what to do. And because I was so young, it's easy for me to pick up sign language. So I learned to sign at school, and I continued to speak at home. I never felt like I was different. I was just a kid. As long as I had fun and enjoyed myself and learned, everything was okay. In the 5th grade, one day my teacher pulled me aside and told me I had to come take a test. I was a little puzzled, but I went to take the test. Taking a test is just normal at school, so I didn't care. What I didn't realize at that time was that the test was from one of the top middle schools in the state of Louisiana, and I actually passed. Again, my dad told me I was going to a new school. This time, I was the only deaf student in my school. Before, in elementary school, I was with deaf classmates and everyone could sign. Now, for the first time, I was the only deaf student in my middle school. That was the first time for me to be separated from my deaf classmates. It turns out my dad and that specific teacher felt that I needed to be challenged. Apparently, they saw something in me that I never realized about myself. I was young, I didn't care, I just wanted to play. As time went on, I started to experience being different. Other students didn't want me to play with them because I was deaf. That was disheartening. It hurt. So I had to figure out how to be myself most of the time. After I graduated 8th grade, when I went to high school, I fell in love with science. I really loved science. I was really lucky that my high school offered a Law and Sciences magnet program. Which allowed me to take more advanced level classes. So I started taking college level biology in high school. I loved taking biology. It motivated me to become fascinated with the human body. Then, during my senior year, I had the opportunity to shadow different types of healthcare professionals like dentists, nurses, doctors, and pharmacists. I couldn't become a veterinarian because I'm afraid of cats. That wasn't doable for me. I didn't want to become a doctor or a nurse because I don't like blood. That's just not for me. Lastly, I had the opportunity to shadow a pharmacist, and it was amazing. Personally, I love puzzles. And you know how each of your bodies are different, right? As a pharmacist, I have to get the right medication that matches your body's needs and helps you recover. That was a perfect fit for me. That made me realize that I wanted to become a pharmacist. Now, how did I decide which college I wanted to go to? I closed my eyes and I picked a spot on the map, which ended up being New York. I decided to look up which colleges are in New York. I happened to see RIT on the list and thought, wow, okay, it sounds so prestigious. I decided to apply for it, and then I got the letter that I was accepted. I also got almost a full scholarship. That was it. I'm going. I felt bad for my dad because remember, I'm a twin. So I was worried about him having to pay for both of us in college at the same time. Getting a full ride helped a lot. My parents didn't believe me that I would move to New York. I said, Dad, do you think that I packed up and shipped all my things to New York for nothing? He thought I was sending gifts to someone in New York. But I didn't know anyone in New York. I didn't know a single person in New York. So then I told him I needed a ride to New Orleans for my flight to New York. He didn't realize until then. I had already bought my own plane tickets with birthday money I saved up. He said, okay, and took a day off to drive me there. So that's how I moved here by myself in 2005, all alone. My parents didn't have enough time to request vacation days because they didn't believe me at first. Then about 3 months later, they flew all the way to visit me here in New York. When I came here to RIT, I didn't know anything about NTID. In the first week of school, I met a woman named JoJo, and she asked me why I wasn't here for SVP. I didn't know what SVP was because I was directly admitted to RIT. Then I realized that most students go through NTID first. Fortunately, I was living in Tower A at the time, and I spent a lot of time with other deaf and hard of hearing students. That was really when I became immersed and fell in love with deaf culture. I learned about my rights and my own independence. RIT was a beautiful place that prepared me well for the real world. Yes, really. That's the truth. Without that foundation, I would not have been able to become a pharmacist, and I probably would have given up easily. So, my experience at RIT was amazing. Amazing. I got to meet so many new people here. Honestly, visiting back here, I see some familiar faces from a long time ago, and they're still here. Like JT. Like, what? You're still here? My goodness, it's so funny. When I was here, I majored in biotechnology. There was no pharmacy program at the time, and I was afraid. I was afraid because I didn't know anyone at that time with a degree in the health field. Being deaf and wanting to become a pharmacist seemed crazy. I mean, who would support you? You can't be the first. So I worked at a research lab and I just focused on that. I graduated in 2008 with a bachelor's degree in biotechnology. I did plan on staying here, but then my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. I decided that I didn't want my brother to drop out of college to take care of our mom. I had graduated and he deserved the opportunity to graduate from college too. So I took some time off to go home and take care of my mom. I planned to come back. I even visited in 2011. And while I was here, I went to visit St. John Fisher College of Pharmacy for an interview. Shortly after that, I went back home to find out that my dad was injured at work. I couldn't just leave him. I decided to drop everything and go home and help take care of my dad. But I had a hard time finding a job. They either told me I was too smart, or they wouldn't accept me because I'm deaf. It was like I went to school for nothing. I became depressed. I was really depressed. One day, my brother asked me, "What's your dream?" I responded, "To become a pharmacist." He asked me, "Why did you give up on your dream?" I said back, "What other deaf pharmacists do you know?" He said, "That doesn't matter. It's about who you are. We, your family, never said you can't do something. Even if you did, you would be stubborn and try to prove us wrong. What's the difference now?" He got me there. So, my brother agreed to pay for my application fees. And of course, I joked with him about him. What's the catch? But I went ahead and sent in my applications. The first school I applied to was Xavier University at Louisiana, and that was in 2011. I actually forgot I applied until later when I received my rejection letter. I still have that letter. Everything in that letter was tied to my hearing loss. That made me furious. I showed my letter to my pastor at the time, and he asked me if I was going to give up. I said, "Yes, I want to give up." He told me I was missing the point. I asked what he meant. He said, I'm a person who doesn't give up. He knew me since I was little. He watched me grow up, and he told me he knew there was something great for me. I just couldn't see it yet. He told me to apply again, and I told him he was crazy. That's crazy. My brother said, you can't say that to your pastor. No, he's crazy. I was still upset, so I decided to wait for another year before I applied again. At that time, it was really strange. I was out with my cousin when my mom texted me. You need to call Xavier University. They're trying to contact you. Okay, so I asked my cousin to be my ears, and I used my voice, and we called back together. We waited on hold for a while, and then a lady came back and told us that she was sorry, but they had called the wrong person. I was okay and hung up because my name is pretty common. So I called my mom back to tell her that they got the wrong person. My mom said, no, it wasn't. My mom explained that when she doesn't recognize the number, she doesn't answer and lets it go to voicemail. In the message, they asked for me by my full government name with my date of birth. Oh, okay, so clearly they did not call the wrong person. So I went back home to call back with my mom. Then my mom asked why I didn't leave a video phone number. I said, every time I left it, they think it's fake, and they didn't know who they were calling. So I left my mom's number so she can help me. So my mom and I called back together. We explained the situation, and they didn't realize that I was deaf. They were calling to extend an invitation to an interview. I decided to be nice because it was their first time interviewing a deaf person and bring my own interpreter with me so I could show them how it works. On the interview day, my interpreter and I went in and I started introducing myself. The first question my interviewers asked me was, as a deaf person, how can you communicate with your patients? I answered, the same way I'm communicating with you right now. No difference. I can talk, but it doesn't matter if I choose not to use my voice. I can still communicate with my patients. There are many resources available. After that, I was accepted into the school and started taking classes. I lived on campus my first year, and I am telling you, never again. It was horrible. At that time, I was 23 years old. The first mistake was to place me in the freshman dorms. One nice thing about it was that it was fancy with a kitchen and 2 bedrooms. I was confused about why I had 2 bedrooms and then realized they thought I had a helper. Come on. I can walk. I can bathe myself. I can dress myself. The only thing that I can't do is hear. That's all. Also, there was a large poster on my door announcing that a deaf person lives here. So, in my freshman dorm, what do you think happened? All night, students would press the doorbell so the lights flashed while I was trying to sleep. It was awful. I called my dad and told him I had to move to a hotel for now because I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus at all, so I lived in a hotel for the last 3 months of school. For the next school year, I got an apartment. I needed to focus. School was challenging for sure. At my school, every single semester, I didn't have interpreters for the first 2 weeks of classes. Even though I had my full schedule ahead of time and sent it to the student disability office, they just did not know what to do with a deaf student. I asked for note takers and interpreters. They did not understand why I needed a note taker. How can I watch the interpreter and take notes simultaneously? I missed a lot. And my teachers had different accents that I could not understand well. I needed help. Many of the teachers had accents. I needed interpreters to be able to succeed in my classes. The office finally approved my request for interpreters, but only for my classes, not student life. That meant I couldn't join any club activities. How can I participate without access? Do they want me to depend on my classmates? It was not fair for me. Of course, I did threaten to contact a lawyer because they did not understand the ADA. They finally realized I wasn't playing. And no, I wasn't playing. This is my education. I have a dream. They gave me this opportunity, and now they're trying to block me from taking advantage of it. Why would they do that? Because it's not normal to see deaf and hard of hearing people in a predominantly hearing world? But it doesn't mean we can't. I had a teacher who used me as an example in front of my class of over 250 students. She said to the class, "If Ashley can get all A's on her test, then what's your excuse?" Whoa, what? I got A's because I worked hard for it. I studied for it. It's not because I'm deaf. My deafness had nothing to do with my education. That was their perspective of me, as being disabled. That was a bad example. If they just think about a person as being disabled, they think if a disabled person can do it and you can't, then what's wrong with you? That's the wrong way to think about it. I worked for it. During exams, I ran into a problem. My professors would talk during exams, and I would have to pause to see what they were saying. So I asked them to share information before we started taking the test, not during the test, because I had to stop and look at my teacher while the rest of the class could keep taking the test and hear at the same time. I lost time because of that. They also refused to let me have interpreters during exams because they assumed it would help me cheat. Really? I only needed them to interpret what the teacher said. That's it. From then on, I took my tests in a separate building with a proctor. It was fine, whatever it took. The point is, I just wanted to finish my degree. I can't win them all. I just wanted to finish. Honestly, in my 4th year, pharmacy is a 4-year program, and you take classes for the first 3 years and then do clinical rotations in the 4th year. I met with the Louisiana Board of Pharmacy, and they informed me that wherever I decided to go for my clinical rotations, that place can decide whether to allow interpreters or not. Why? If I were in an accident or had to go to a hospital, the hospital would call an interpreter, not the doctor. If I were in prison and I had to go to court, the court would call the interpreter, not the lawyer. What's different about these situations? The board hesitated, but ended up allowing me to have an interpreter at my clinical site. I was fortunate to find a wonderful group who accepted me and was willing to train me. Really, it worked out in my favor because I was exposed to different areas of pharmacy outside the traditional clinical pharmacy experience. During the 3rd year of pharmacy school, people normally start looking for a job. It took me 18 months to secure my first job. 18 months. My classmates got jobs quickly, no problem. But I struggled. It got to the point that I gave up using my video phone. I resorted to knocking on doors and giving out my resume. I drove all the way to another state just to hand out my resume. Using the video phone just wasn't working. They would call me back and hang up without leaving a message. If I called back, I didn't know the extension number to the right department because I didn't know who called me. I started knocking on doors to force people to see me. I am capable. My deafness doesn't affect it. I am capable. You see, obviously I passed the test. It was not an easy test. I did the work. Now I needed the opportunity to practice what I've learned. I graduated with a pharmacy degree in 2016. I worked with several different kinds of pharmacies. My first job was a traveling pharmacist. Later on, I became pregnant and my husband didn't want me to travel while being pregnant. I decided to step back and take on retail pharmacy instead. I worked for a grocery store called Berkshire's. I worked there for 3 or 4 years, and while I worked there, during that time, they really changed how they provided access to different spoken languages, like Spanish or Chinese. But the system they had in place didn't list ASL at all. ASL is a language. I told them their phone call system can translate other spoken languages. But there was no access in ASL because it was limited to voice calls only. I told them they have an entire community who relies on sign language, and ASL needed to be added. Without ASL access, they were violating the law. They did set up a video phone, but it was never turned on. What's the point? So deaf people would find me. At that time, I worked at different stores on different days. Can you guess what deaf patients would do? They called to ask where the deaf pharmacist was, which store I would be at that day. They would follow me, and it became overwhelming because there were so many patients coming to me. I couldn't handle them all. Then I got pregnant with my second child. I decided that I needed a better work-life balance because at that time, I worked 12-hour days. I wanted to see my kids. I wanted to see my children growing up. So what I did was I found a long-term care, LTC nursing home. I loved working there. That was my first job that fully accepted me. They asked me what I needed to succeed in this job. All I needed was a video phone. That's it, just a video phone. So I could answer phone calls because I wanted to be a part of the team too. Just give me access and we're all good here. Unfortunately, that company closed down right after the COVID-19 pandemic, like many other nursing homes that have closed. I could not find a full-time job. I struggled. Even though you hear about the shortage of pharmacists, I needed a job. I was here and willing, and they're stuck on one thing, my deafness. They didn't know about accommodations, and they were afraid. Instead of asking me, they assumed. But my journey was worth it. I became a mother, I became a wife. Why is that so important to me? When I was in 6th grade, my teacher once told me that a deaf person can't do anything. Deaf people can't do anything. The only good thing you're good for is making babies. You will never have a job, you'll just be sitting at home on welfare. But no, I had a dream. My family told me that I deserve to live my life however I want. With their support, anything I want will happen. See, that was my foundation. Without their support, I don't believe I would have come to RIT. My family encouraged me and believed in me. I proved them wrong, the haters. I am a wife, a mother, and a pharmacist. Now I own a business called MedMax Counseling. I use my experience as a deaf and Black woman and a pharmacist to advocate for change, especially for deaf and hard of hearing people in healthcare, and especially in pharmacy. You deserve fair access. Not just you, it's also for myself. I help educate my colleagues because they are missing an entire community. It's either they don't care or are ignorant. You can't fix what you don't know. I'm here to tell them we have so many resources to help, if they're willing. They have to be willing and open-minded to help changes happen and make life a bit easier for the deaf and hard of hearing community. I don't only educate hearing colleagues about working with deaf and hard of hearing patients, but I also counsel deaf and hard of hearing people on how to use their medicine properly. They miss a lot of information from pharmacies. I want to change that. My favorite quote is, "Deafness should not be viewed as a disability, but rather a unique ability." Think about it this way. The word disability automatically makes society think that you can't, that there's something wrong with you. I want you to change the way we view it. Unique ability. What is so unique about you? It's not about ignoring the fact that you can't hear. It's not about that. It's about forcing you to think about it. What's special about you? What power do you have that makes you different? What makes us curious about you? What makes us want to know more about you? The word disability makes society ignore you. I don't want that. I don't want to hear the word disability because that word is automatically negative. I want to change it to unique ability. That is my experience. One thing I want you to take away from this event is whatever dream you have, even if it's from the past, you still have time. Go for it. If no one believes in you, I do. I definitely believe in you. I encourage you, whatever you want to be, go for it. Because no one can stop you except yourself. Thank you again for inviting me to come. We want to thank you again, Dr. Walker, for this presentation, and we enjoyed having you here. Thank you. Also, we want to let you know that we will have another Vital Signs lecture next year in 2025. Please look forward to our announcement soon.